Thank you to them for the participation, and the Internet 2 K20 initiative. Thank you, thank you, thank you for making this possible. We'd like to talk about these groups really quickly. So we wanted to start off by saying, well, what is a presidential library? And I'm just going to ask one of the schools right now if they want to chime in and let us know what they believe a presidential library could be or is. Cambridge, would you like to take that question?
That's like
the question is what is a presidential library? Is that what it is?
That is the question.
I have not a clue.
Students, raise your hand if you know what a presidential library is.
Hasten, take it away.
Library.
Hasten.
Okay, we have library with presidents. For one answer.
That's a pretty good start. We now have 15 official presidential libraries. It was started by an act of Congress after Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so each of the presidents now has a library. It is not just books, which is what we normally think of in a library, like the one you're sitting in there. But it's also artifacts and records, things that pertain to that person's presidency. So one of the most recent presidential libraries that started was actually Richard Nixon became the 12th one in 2007. There's one for President Clinton. There's one for each of the Bush presidents here in Texas and also the Lyndon Johnson. So these are places that are repositories for artifacts, videos, historic documents, and anything else that might be give us an insight into both the person who is the president and then what happened during that presidency. There are also some other libraries that are out there. They're called the informal presidential libraries. These are for Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, some others who had collections, but there wasn't an act of Congress to put it as part of the National Archives and Records Administration. So, for instance, the Lincoln Library in Illinois is actually run by the state of Illinois. So if you get to a presidential library, you're going to see all kinds of different objects as well as books. I know right here in Austin with the LBJ library, the first thing you see when you walk in is a very large car that was used as part of his motorcade. So there's some very surprising things in a lot of these different libraries. If another site would like to chime in, our next question is, what is a national park? Okay, how about if we call on the Fessenden Bowdoin School? Can you tell us what a national park is?
Land set aside by the government. Can you hear us there?
Yes, we can. You hear it sound a little bit like Darth Vader, but we can hear you.
Okay, I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, somebody had an answer here. Land set aside by the government for recreational purposes.
I like that. That's a great description. And actually, we've included the national parks as a primary source, which is a little bit unusual if you start reading about primary sources. But places can tell us a lot about history as well. So the expansion, though, of national parks in the U.S. is that they're also historic sites. So Independence Hall is part of the national parks, but it's not necessarily a recreation site. I've had a picnic there, but it's more of a historic site and less for recreation. But originally, a lot of this land was indeed put aside for conservation and recreation. So thanks for that answer. That was terrific. Okay, the last group that's joining us as a collaborator and a sponsor of this is Internet 2. That one might be a little harder for folks to figure out. But They are a member-owned national education network. So if you think of the internet, it's kind of a second internet. And it connects 39 education networks across the United States. And it puts together educators and innovators around the nation. And their purpose is to support collaboration with local libraries, museums, and classrooms. They're connecting over 60,000 U.S. educational, research, government, and community anchor institutions. So this is a huge network. It's free of enterprise, and so we call it the other network. The internet is, well, the commodity internet, where we have business and things like this. And this one is strictly for education. So today, you are part of an inaugural project for these groups, and your participation and experiences are going to help guide the projects that happen during the coming years. The goal of this project is to engage classrooms throughout the nation and in the international education community in discussions built on an overarching theme of democracy, and utilizing the primary source documents and places and artifacts for student research and presentation. So I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce you to the presidential libraries, those national parks that are joining us, and the state collaborators. And so I'd like to show you where some of these folks might be located. I'm going to switch here to a slide. And I'd also like to acknowledge the state coordinators from around the U.S. So if any of them would like to open their mic for a moment and just say hello from the different networks, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, this is Kristen Magruder in Idaho, Idaho Education Network. I came up with Cambridge High School to the kickoff this morning.
Great. Are there any of our other coordinators on? And Fessenden, I think you might still have your mic open. If you want to double check that, we're getting the lovely sound of Darth Vader in the background again.
Can you still hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Okay, it looks like California has joined us as well, so welcome. Okay, so thank you. I know Carol Willis is right here from Texas, and she's shaking her head and smiling and saying hello. So, okay. So what does this have to do with you, the student, sitting there staring at me? The primary purpose of this event is to get you and your classmates engaged with primary source documents. If you've used primary source documents already in something you've done for social studies, English, or another class, just raise your hand and wave at me for a second. Okay, I see a small response, but that's good. That means there are a couple folks out there who are more aware of a primary resource. So you're going to work with the different providers, and each one of them has picked a topic around which they have selected some primary sources for you to really hone in on and pay attention to. And they picked a topic that's played a part in the development of global democracy. So that's the overarching theme here. Each one of these topics has numerous primary source documents associated with it. So the question might be, what is a primary resource? So we're going to go out and look at two different places that have information about this. One of them is the Library of Congress, kind of place where a lot of things are kept in the United States. It's one of the biggest libraries in the world. And then I also am going to take you to a source at the University of Illinois, because they give you some really good ideas there. So if we're going here, okay, like I'm not getting there today. Let me just give this a minute. I have a feeling my internet got turned off. But that the Library of Congress, there's a terrific module on what is a primary resource and how you would use it. For instance, if you look at something from your school, you look at your, hello, we have Yahoo interrupting here. If you're looking at things in your school, such as your report card, that could be used as a primary source to find out more about you. You could look at playbill from your theater group. You could look at the football scores for your high school, all primary sources that we can look at to determine more about your school and your community. So going out here to the Library of Congress, there's a module here that you might like to look at about using primary sources. It lists the types that are there. It also tells you what to look for as you're looking at each different type of document. The other source at the University of Illinois gives you some examples. And so here's a dance bill or a dance card from way back, probably the beginning of the century, when people went to formal dances and they actually signed up to dance with each other instead of what we normally do today, which is just kind of look at someone the right way and start dancing. Okay, another example might be something like vital records, your birth certificate, a death certificate, marriage license, things like that. Literary manuscripts that people have sent in to have recorded, institutional records. Here's something from the supply store at the University of Illinois, which would give you a really good list of what was available back in the early 1900s. So looking at these different source documents, you can start to tell a lot about what the community is like, what types of occupations people hold in those communities, what their main source of income is, and then put that up against other documents that would then help you determine what it was like to live in that particular place at that particular time. You'd also see the different ideas that people have about democracy if you're looking at the documents and the artifacts that people had around a particular issue. So are there any questions about the kinds of resources that you'll be looking at? Okay, well, as those questions develop in your head, save them, because at the end we'll be asking again if you want to have some more information. During the next 2 months, you're going to see presentations from individuals who are experts in primary source documents. And this spring, you will speak to these experts as they set up some office hours where you can directly connect to them via video conference, or perhaps another way, so that you can talk to them about questions that you have about the documents, get more information about them, and they'll be able to show you the documents you need, as well as to offer their expertise in helping you to interpret what that information means. We're now going to hear from each of these content providers that will be doing the presentations for you in the next few weeks. You're going to learn a little bit about each of the sites, and you'll get to know some of the people who are there. So we're going to start a segment now with about 3 minutes from each of the different content providers, and I'm going to move over to my computer again so that I can take us to the George Bush Library, which is located in beautiful downtown College Station, Texas. And unfortunately, Shirley Hammond, the Director of Education, couldn't be with us today, but she sent us a short video clip that will explain what you need to know about the library.
We look forward to welcoming you to the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum. There are 43 million pages of documents, more than 1 million photographs, and more than 100,000 artifacts. We are located in College Station, Texas, on the campus of Texas A&M University. My name is Shirley Hammond, and I'm the Director of Education at the Bush Library Museum. We hope you will join us on November 8th in the morning. George Herbert Walker Bush became the 41st President of the United States in January of 1989. His administration lasted to January of 1993. During these 4 years, significant changes happened throughout the world to expand global democracy. A major stimulus for this change followed the fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989. The wall was a primary Cold War symbol. The East German government had built the Berlin Wall in 1961 to keep the Eastern Germans from fleeing to the West. We have a 2.5-ton piece of the Berlin Wall as a primary source artifact in the Bush Museum. It was presented to President Bush on behalf of the German people on April 21, 1993, in commemoration of his role to support the democratization of the Eastern Europe bloc countries. Also, there are 2 web quests with primary sources about the Berlin Wall online at presidentialtimeline.org. From the archives, we will use both audio, visual, and document analysis of primary sources to bring this history alive. What were other leaders of foreign governments thinking at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall? How did democracy help to change attitudes and generate support of new pro-democracy movements in Eastern Europe? Telephone conversations between President Bush and Chancellor Helmut Kohl of West Germany, as well as President Bush and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher of Great Britain, will be considered because they were involved in the decision-making process. The rise of pro-democracy movements urging self-determination gained momentum after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and eventually the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe resulted. An important document deals with the meeting on December 3, 1989, between President Bush and Chairman Gorbachev of the Soviet Union when they met in Malta. Also, primary research by Jesslyn Welsh and Cody Welsh will be highlighted. Find out what they did and why they found it exciting to do original primary source research. Please join us November 8th. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to remind you, as Ms. Hammond just mentioned, they will be doing their presentation on November 8th. That's tomorrow. And so that's at 10 a.m. Central Time. So if you want to tune in for that, that is tomorrow on the expansion of global democratization following the fall of the Berlin Wall. All right, now we're going to move over to the Harry S. Truman Library. So we're going to travel north from Texas here, go on up to Independence, Missouri. And I'd like to welcome Mark Adams, the Education Director, who will be talking to us about their presentation on the Cold War crisis. So, Mr. Adams, if you could join us, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome again. My name is Mark Adams. I'm the Education Director here at the Harry S. Truman Library in Independence, Missouri. For those of you not familiar with that geography, we're about 20 miles east of Kansas City and the home of Harry Truman. As you heard already about presidential libraries and museums, we have a wonderful library and museum here. We have about 16 million documents related to the Truman presidency, and you can actually find a lot of those online. We have about 30,000 of those documents online on our website, trumanlibrary.org. As you just heard from my colleague Shirley Hammond in Texas about the Bush Library, we will also be looking at Germany. But rather than looking at the fall of the Berlin Wall, we'll be looking at the first crisis in Berlin in 1948. And really it was one of the first Cold War crises between the US and its allies and the Soviet Union. I'm standing in front of a map of Germany, which is one of the primary sources we'll be looking at on November 13th. And we'll be doing 3 presentations that day to cater to different time zones. We'll be looking at the crisis between former allies, the Soviet Union and the US, and what to do when the Soviet Union blockades the city of Berlin. We'll give you some background information on what happened and why the Soviets chose to block that city, and then look at the options that Truman had in response to that. Did he want to go and fight a World War III just 3 years after the end of World War II? Was he going to give up on Germany? And if he was to save Berlin, how could he do it? We're going to do that through the use of primary sources you've heard about. Some of the most exciting primary sources we have are top secret CIA documents. The CIA was in Germany giving reports to Truman about what they thought that Stalin was going to do next. We also have lots of maps, as you can see an example of that behind me, photographs, correspondence to Truman, letters written to him by the general public, because it became a global crisis. What should they do after Stalin has blockaded that city, and how should they respond? Also looking at the correspondence between the British and the French towards the US, and correspondence to Truman from those countries as they were involved also. I just wanted to point out this one primary source behind me that shows the city, the country of Germany and how it was divided. I'm going to step out of the way and maybe just use my arm to indicate. At the end of World War II, you see how Germany is divided up. I know these colors may not come across that well, but we have the green area for Britain and the blue area for France, and then the yellow area for the US zone, and then the Soviet zone of the whole of Germany after World War II. You'll notice that Berlin is well inside that Soviet zone. So when it's blockaded, all the road, all the rail, all of the supplies to Berlin were cut off. So that's why it became a crisis at that time. We have a number of those documents online for you to look at ahead of my presentation on November 13th, and then certainly after the presentation as well. So I hope that you'll sign up to hear about my presentation on November 13th, to examine those primary source documents, and then learn about this very exciting time in U.S. history. Thank you.
We're going to move a little bit north now to the Theodore Roosevelt Center up in Dickinson, North Dakota. So we'll move up a little bit further, a little bit colder. And this is one of the informal presidential libraries. So we're going to hear from one of their staff people, Clay Jenkins, who's going to talk to us about what they have there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Clay Jenkinson of the Theodore Roosevelt Center at Dickinson State University in southwestern North Dakota. Let me tell you just a little bit about the Theodore Roosevelt Center. Young Roosevelt came out from New York to Dakota Territory in September of 1883 to kill his first buffalo. He got the buffalo, but he also fell in love with the stark and eerie beauty of the Badlands of western Dakota Territory. Impulsively, he invested in not one, but two ranches here. First the Maltese Cross in 1883, and then in June 1884, the Elkhorn Ranch, 35 miles north of the little frontier village of Medora. He regarded himself as an authentic cowboy. He stopped stampedes. He rode night watch around the cattle in long roundups. He arrested boat thieves and marched them overland to justice. He punched out drunken gunslingers in bars. He had a rollicking good time, and he was transformed from a highly educated, somewhat frail New York dude into the exemplar of the strenuous life who became the 26th President of the United States. He spent much of 4 years here between 1883 and 1887, and later, after he left the presidency, he came back to North Dakota in 1910 and said in Fargo, "I would never have become the President of the United States had it not been for the time that I spent in North Dakota." Like so many other people of his time, Roosevelt believed that the Northern Europeans, particularly the Anglo-Saxon people of Britain and the United States, were the acme of what civilization can be. And all other people, Africa, Central and South America, indigenous peoples from all over the world, all of those he regarded as at a less highly developed stage of civilization. Their time would come, he knew, but in the short term, they must be supervised by the Teutonic or Anglo-Saxon race. I suppose you could say that Theodore Roosevelt was a somewhat problematic figure in the spread of global democracy. But he was not an imperialist. In fact, he had a chance once as president to annex the Dominican Republic, and he said, "I would rather swallow a porcupine backward." We firmly believe that you cannot understand a historical figure without placing him or her firmly within the context of their times, that everyone is a product of the world in which they are born and shaped, and that it's a mistake to use our standards from the 21st century in trying to make sense of someone who lived a long time ago. In fact, it leads to serious historical distortion. We are extraordinarily excited about this project and delighted to have the chance to work with all of you. In addition to being a writer and scholar, I sometimes dress up as the 26th President of the United States, and during our live sessions, you'll have the opportunity to put questions to Theodore Roosevelt, and I shall do my very best to answer them boldly and in a manly fashion in character. Thank you very much for your time. We so look forward to working with you, and welcome to the Theodore Roosevelt Center at Dickinson State University.
Okay, that one is going to be on Tuesday, November 27th, so that looks like an exciting event to also join into. And now we're going to move to Mount Rushmore, so we're going to go a bit south into South Dakota and take a quick tour here to get ourselves located there. And then I'd like to introduce Amy Bracewell, who's a historian and is going to speak to us about their presentation, which will be on December 5th. So, Amy, if you'd like to jump on camera, we'll hear from you now.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Well, welcome to Mount Rushmore National Memorial. It is a beautiful day out here. And do you have me on camera now?
We're looking at a poster of some soldiers who seem to be off to the side of it.
That is not me.
Looks like we're seeing Valley Forge. Now we see Mount Rushmore.
Hi, folks. You've apparently...
Just tell us.
You've... Aha, okay.
How is it now? Do you see the faces yet?
Yes, we do see the faces on the mountain.
Great. And my audio is still coming in?
Yes, it is.
Rushmore National Memorial. It is a beautiful blue sky day here in South Dakota. About 50 degrees, very warm and unusual for us in November. So we really lucked out this morning. I am joined here by my friends on the mountain. We've got George Washington Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln here at Mount Rushmore. It not only represents the sculpture, these four presidents that we will be discussing in the program, created this to represent the larger ideas of the country, and predominantly democracy. There is symbolism infused in this sculpture, and as a national icon, we have all seen this sculpture in popular culture, in books, but there's a deeper meaning behind it, and that's what we're going to delve into with our program. The evolution of democracy in this country. We're not just a static country. I'm sure all of y'all are aware that things are very different today than they were in George Washington's time. And we're going to look into that evolution and what were the major key moments in their history that really changed democracy, that really moved us in the direction to where we are today. We're going to look at their inaugural addresses, their letters and correspondence, the Gettysburg Address, the Declaration of Independence, and look
Could
at
you hold on for just a moment, please? There seems to be an open mic. Could everyone check that their mic is closed so that we can hear Amy more clearly? Thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
So our primary sources are going to be looking at the words of these four presidents and what their intentions were for the country forward. Why democracy was important during Lincoln's time. Why he felt that even though we had differences of opinion, we should stay together. Why Roosevelt felt that it was important to focus on the working man and the justice of the individual. The 1900s. It was a very different time, as even it was today. We're going to move from those primary sources and get responses from you of what we can do today in the country. I want to hear from the classrooms of what you think it takes to be a participant in the democracy. See this moving forward. Everyone believed in that all men have a right to be free and happy. What does that mean to you? And what does that mean in today's world? We're going to take a look at all of that and with Mount Rushmore. So I look forward to the conversations with the classrooms.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we look forward to that on December 5th. Hopefully it'll be another clear day so you can show us those beautiful sculpted faces behind you. So thank you very much. We're going to move now to Valley Forge National Historic Park. And so we'll be moving east here out of South Dakota and towards the eastern seaboard. Hopefully you all weathered that storm fairly well. I used to live about 20 miles from there, and I've heard from my friends who have talked about just getting their electric back in the last 2 days. So Valley Forge, I'd like to introduce you, and if you could fill the kids in on what you'll be presenting on December 6th, go for it.
Well, hello. I want to thank you all. First of all, thank you for checking on us. Yes, we do have our power back, and most of the area is already recovering very well from the storm. Thanks for asking. And hello, everyone. My name is David Lawrence. I am one of the park rangers here at Valley Forge. Our park is located just outside of Philadelphia, and it helps to commemorate a major event that occurred during the American Revolution. It's a somewhat unusual park because most of the time when you see a historic site that is related to a major war in our history, you expect it to be a battlefield. As a matter of fact, one of the more common questions that we get from visitors is, where's the battlefield? And we have to remind people that actually Valley Forge was not the site of a major battle. This was the place where Washington would move his army to spend the winter of 1777-1778. So why is it so important if it wasn't a battle? This was a site where the army was at a low point in the history of the war. Washington had just lost several major battles, and more importantly, he lost Philadelphia. The British had captured the largest city in the United States at the time, the place where the Declaration of Independence had been created. Secondly, this ends up being one of the deadliest winter encampments in the 8-year war. By the time the army leaves here, they've lost almost 10% of their army to disease due to the weather, supply shortages, and hunger. It is also important because in spite of that, it was when the army leaves here after 6 months, they leave stronger, better organized, and better prepared to fight the British than ever before. So even though they didn't fight a battle against the British, they did fight various other battles. And Washington's ability and organized and unified during the hardships that they encountered here had just as much to do with us winning our independence as any victory on the battlefield. And it's that leadership that we're going to be talking about during our program. And for that, let me introduce you to the presenter who will be performing, Adam Messenger. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or morning, everybody. My name is Ranger Adam Messinger. The reason I'm a seasonal ranger here at Valley Forge during the summers. During the rest of the year, I'm a history instructor specializing in U.S. history at Valley Forge Military Academy, located nearby in Wayne, Pennsylvania. The basis of our program is based in Washington's leadership. For this, we look to a series of 7 traits exhibited by Washington and used not only here at Valley Forge, but throughout the duration of the American Revolution. These are the same traits encompassed in the United States Army today that takes its foundation from Washington and the Continental Army. The traits of loyalty, honor, integrity, and personal courage are all fundamental traits that you can use in your lives, your personal lives, to be a successful leader. We're going to be looking at, through the use of primary sources, we'll be looking at Washington and the ways he exercised some of these values and traits, looking at historical examples from Washington's leadership throughout the American Revolution. We hope that you'll join us on the 6th of December when we give our presentation on these values of Washington and his leadership. Now, it's very important to understand that we can look to history and some of the archives. Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to working with you and learning a lot more about Washington's leadership in that international community. So as you said before, that's going to be on December 6th. We have one more stop, and I'm sorry I had to move off of Valley Forge so quickly, but we're going to move a little bit south now and go to Plains, Georgia, and to the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. And so this is a video clip, and you're going to be surprised at exactly what this looks. Maybe not. So let me bring that clip up for you. I'm going to ask Carol Willis just to say hello for a minute. She's sitting right over here, and I'm going to quickly get that clip. I apologize. We all know that technology works most of the time.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, we've had some technical difficulties this morning, especially with our open mics, but it's awesome to have schools from North Dakota and Idaho, and we do have a school in Texas connected. And it's exciting to see our presenters and content providers come together over the use of primary sources. So we look forward to their individual presentations. Some will be offering their presentations multiple times a day. The Bush Library presentation, which is tomorrow, will be offered only once, and that was at 10 o'clock Central Time. Oh, I believe we got the audio, the video ready to go, and we probably are not going to have time for questions. Save them for the specific content presentations, and you'll be able to ask questions of the experts there. This is the last of our content providers, and it's a video, Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. Bye.
Here we go.
Boy, Jimmy Carter attended this school. One of his teachers told his students, study hard. One of you may be president one day. Little did anyone know that Jimmy Carter would become the 39th president of the United States of America, and his wife, Rosalind Smith Carter, who attended this school, would be the First Lady. Through this video conference, we will explore history using primary sources such as written documents, speeches, and also photos. These documents will help us understand the pathway to peace that began for Jimmy Carter here in Plains, at this very school, and on the Carter farm. Dr. Jay Hakes, who served on the Carter administration and witnessed the signing of the Camp David Accords, will join us for a question-and-answer session. We look forward to you joining us on December the 11th.
Okay, just to remind you, that event will be held on December 11th from the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site on the Camp David Accords and exploring a path to peace. Please remember that you can use the hashtag to put up information about your school or questions that you might have. You can also use the email, and you can text to the phone number 512-542-1124 if you have any questions. We hope to see you at these events coming up starting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central from the George Bush Library. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're looking forward to working with you through the year.